I am Mo, aka, what's a good surfer name? Never mind, I'm going to give up on that. Founding member and senior fellow at the Institute for J. Silverheels Appreciation. Come to think of it, I'm the only member. Anyway, I'm the acupuncturist. Aloha! Hang loose! I am the acupuncturist here at Siloam Center for Traditional Medicine.
And I'm Dr. Noelle. I'm the chiropractor here at the Siloam Center and happy to be with Mo here.
If you're wondering why I'm glancing over my shoulder, it's not because I'm worried about creditors or... What would be another good reason to glance over your shoulder? Disgruntled siblings. No, I'm not. I'm looking over my shoulder because we are having technical difficulties like crazy, and we're supposed to have been live with this show 20 minutes ago, and it didn't go through, and so what we're trying to do is just record something for you guys to keep a steady stream of data coming up, a steady stream of information on Lyme disease, and we're actually cheating and using my phone, so if the audio stinks, forgive me. Blame it on the shirt.
Well, and if you have some questions too, just drop it in the comments or send us a message and we can always clarify as well if something doesn't end up getting your way.
Yes. So last week, before we were so rudely interrupted by our internet cutting out, we were talking about co-infections to Lyme disease, and I think we pretty well covered Babesia. Don't know if it all uploaded or not. I hope it did. But today we're going to talk about
Bartonella.
Oh, yeah. Sounds festive, doesn't it? It's not. Bartonella is terrible. He's terrible. Now would be a great time for Hero, or whoever's going to video edit this, to introduce a background of cat scratch fever playing. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, Bartonella is also known as cat scratch fever, which was popularized in the 60s or 70s by a drug-fueled haze of music appreciation.
That's pretty accurate, though. That's a good description.
For those of you who lived through the 60s and remember it, you won't be upset with me. For those of you who lived through the 60s and don't remember it, or saying, hey man, I don't remember it being like that. Where am I? So let's get right to the Bartonella. Otherwise, we're never going to get there, and we're already cutting short time. So Bartonella is it animal, vegetable, or mineral? It's bacterial. It's bacterial. So, you have the Lyme disease, which is a spirochete. It's an anaerobic spirochete. Bartonella is also an anaerobic bacterial. And Bartonella goes right hand in glove with Lyme disease. They
like to travel together.
They like to travel together, yeah. They're like Smokey and the Bandit. They what was the Clint Eastwood movie where he had the orangutan? Anyway.
I like Smokey and the Bandit. The snowman.
They travel together. But they also travel with their other friends. We'll just go back to the Rolling Stones and the groupies.
Perfect.
Think of Lyme as Mick Jagger. Think of Bartonella as... I'm not a culture vulture. I don't know anyone else in the band. Think of Bartonella as the drummer, and think of Babesia as the keyboardist, if they have one. And then you can start thinking of the other co-infection. Never mind. You can think of tapeworms as their agent. Anyway, these are anaerobic bacteria. In other words, they don't have to be in the bloodstream getting oxygen to survive, which is why when dentists are working with people with Bartonella or Lyme disease issues, those poor people usually will end up with the dry socket issue because the bacteria is deep down inside, the tooth gets pulled, they get stirred up, and they say, fiesta! And then all of a sudden, the person's got this raging infection and they're hurting. Speaking of Fiesta, did you like my shirt?
Love it.
This was a gift from a dear friend of mine, Paul. Thank you, Paul, if ever you are stuck watching this. I do appreciate the shirt.
Looks nice and cool for today, too.
It's very comfortable. And it's kind of obnoxious. It fits
It's
me.
fun.
It fits my personality. By the way, a lot of people don't realize this, but I am Polynesian
Oh, yeah?
in nature.
Okay.
So, the infection was first reported in the 1990s,
Okay.
Bartonella. And it was mainly carried by cats.
Cat scratch fever.
Yes. And because it likes to hang out in the bloodstream, but it doesn't have to, keep in mind. And you're dealing with a disease that was really first identified in the 90s. That's not that long ago.
Mm-mm.
I mean, think about...
I was born in 90.
Oh, such a little one.
So it's been around probably as long as me.
I was 960 years old when that...
So you were talking about the 60s. I wasn't even a twinkle in anybody's eye in the 60s.
I wasn't even a regret of anyone yet in the 60s. I became a regret in the 70s. The late 70s.
Now you can figure out our ages. Some of you were wondering. So, anyways.
I'm 65 years old. I've had a very cushy life. So you're dealing with a diagnosis that's not that old. Not much really has been done to study it. We know that it's been linked to endocarditis. We know that it's been linked to kidney diseases. We know that it's been linked to a number of other autoimmune situations. So it's in that same class of criminal, if you will, as Lyme disease. Mm-hmm. It can affect the heart. It affects the very deep organs of the body. In Chinese medicine, you have yin and you have yang. Please don't ever come in and say, yeah, I'm going to talk about yin and yang. You can only pull that off if you've got an Ernest P. Worrell mask on. It's yin and yang, and so you have yin and yang organs, yang being the more outer parts of the body, yin being the most inward parts of the body. The deepest yin organs are the heart and the kidney. Mm-hmm. Well, hello, Lyme disease can cause these things. I was just talking to a patient about a half hour ago, 45 minutes ago, who's very likely got a situation of a Lyme nephritis, where the Lyme has gone in and started to destroy her kidneys. The doctors, however, instead of saying what has caused this nephritis, they're just treating nephritis. You can't do that. You need to know what caused it, because otherwise you've got the dam and it's starting to break and you're plugging your fingers into the holes, but until you clear what's causing the decay on the backside of the dam,
it's going to keep coming.
It's going to keep coming, and pretty soon it's just going to burst. And that poor individual is going to need new kidneys, going to need dialysis, and it's going to be a nightmare situation.
You had mentioned heart and kidney. Anything with lung, because the heart and the lung are so intertwined with how they work, does that usually affect lung at all? Or not really?
From what I've seen and from what I've studied, the Lyme and Bartonella will have some impact on the lung, but primarily it's the co-infections.
Okay.
A lot of the, and I think Bartonella does get into the lung, come to think of it, but primarily it's going to be fungal co-infections that like to get into the lung, and so you'll have presentations like a dermatomyositis. Dermatomyositis, you end up with this shawl-like rash around you, and you say, "Woo, look at me, I'm stylish." And you go to your doctor, and they say, "You're not stylish, you're sick." And
that's if your doctor's a horse.
Wilbur, I think you're sick. My brain's just going everywhere right now.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, because like a lot of, it does deal with the blood. It doesn't have to be in the blood, like you said, because they do not need oxygen to survive, and the blood cells bring the oxygen around. That's why I was wondering with heart and lung, is there that too?
Well, there's a connection there, especially with the co-infections, and you will get these co-infections going into the lung, and what does the lung do? The lung will protect itself. The lung will wall off an infection, kind of like what happens in tuberculosis. And so you end up with the scar tissue in the lungs, and they take an x-ray of you and they say, "Oh, how are you still breathing?" And you say, with some effort. But Bartonella is Bartonella is where the stretch mark
presentation
comes in. But it also affects red blood cells. Remember, Babesia affects red blood cells. If you want to look at our video that we did on Babesia last week, what uploaded, let us know if you need more information on that. But if you want to look at that video, just check in the box above Dr. Noelle's head. Hero, can you put that there? You are the man. So, can you balance that on your nose? Try it. Anyway, anyone have a herring we can throw her? So, the Bartonella, because it's affecting the red blood cells, what do red blood cells carry? Oxygen. So, it's another one of those illnesses where people end up feeling oxygen starved. And, they do the simplest task, tying their shoe, and they're out of breath. They can't walk across the room without getting out of breath. They go and they do the stress test, and the stress test comes back, "No, your heart's fine. Gosh and gollies, we don't know what it is. We think you're just nuts. We're going to put you on an SSRI antidepressant."
Will you notice change in that cell, red blood cell, if they look up under the microscope at it?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. It should, but
no.
No.
Because it's a good pretender, and it's not going to be that easy to find.
And on a chronic level, in an acute level, yes, it's going to be in the blood. But just like Lyme, just like Babesia, Babesia, I love saying that. I think of Garbo every time. Did you ever see the Garbo film Nanochka?
No, I have not.
Yeah, you're not missing anything. Anyway.
So I don't need to YouTube it later?
No, you really don't.
Okay.
Just think over dramatics and a Russian accent. You've got Nanochka.
I think I might have to look it up anyways.
Or if you want over dramatics and a Russian accent, you can also watch Dr. Zhivago. I wouldn't recommend it. If you want your taste of Russian history in film, watch War and Peace.
Okay.
You'll get a great nap. But because of its chronic nature, it doesn't have to stay in the bloodstream.
Okay.
Just like the Lyme and the Babesia, Bartonella likes to hide in the non-vascular tissues, the joints, the cartilage, the synovial fluid. Now, what do those three things have in common? Lots of natural sugars. So then the BART, the Babesia, the Lyme, they all start eating on those natural sugars of your synovial fluid, the glucosamine. What's the root word of glucosamine, children? Sugar. Glucose.
Yeah.
So it's eating these sugars that are in us.
The body's throwing off pain signals because it is attacking, inflammation's coming out of it.
Exactly.
Toxic waste, I'm sure, is coming out of these.
Your body's becoming a Superfund site, essentially. Now, these are critters, okay? Babesia, Bartonella and Lyme are bacterial critters. Babesia is a protozoa. They're critters. What do critters do? They eat and they secrete. And so when they secrete, that becomes a poison in the body. That becomes a biotoxin.
Yeah.
That signals inflammation.
That's when pain comes in.
That's where pain comes in. And so that's where you need something that's going to go in and bond to those biotoxins that are in our bloodstream and pull them out. And so when you're treating for Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia, Candida, you name it, any bug that's producing this stuff, you've got to have some sort of a binder that's going to glom onto this stuff and pull it out.
Do we know what any of those toxins are? Like, I guess I've been doing more research with other things, and I know, like, with white blood cell die-off, if you get too much, you get uric acid, like gout, so that it can give systemic-wide pain like gout.
And gout doesn't just have to be in the foot.
No.
I've had patients with gout in their neck, patients with it in their vertebrae, in their back, their arms, their wrists. It doesn't have to be in the foot.
That's just common. You know, they have to have something in the textbook for us to learn off of.
But how many patients are textbook?
Barely any.
I think I've had one.
It's always nice, isn't it?
You look at them and you say, I can't believe it. I know what this is. It's presenting, it's walking like a duck, it's talking like a duck. It even has the duck ID card, which is really nice. You send away $5 to the back of a place in Popular Mechanics magazine, you too can be a certified duck. So the question is, what are some of these biotoxins? One of the main is ammonia.
Okay.
And so, you know, the parasites, the protozoa and these guys, they produce a lot of ammonia. The other thing is the biofilms that these things create, both in the gut as well as in the joints where they're living, the biofilms become natural magnets and sponges to heavy metals. Okay. We're not going to say heavy metals from here on in, we're going to say toxic metals. For two reasons. One, if I say heavy metal, she's going to get a mohawk and start headbanging. You don't want to see that. Two, copper is considered a heavy metal. Iron is considered a heavy metal.
You do need some.
You do need some heavy metals, but once they pass a certain level, they become toxic. So metals are important, but you can't have certain levels of them. So once they exceed that level, toxic level, then it becomes a toxic metal. And then you need to chelate. You need something to grab hold of it again and pull it out.
Yep.
It's the metal treatment equivalent of what we were talking with biotoxin binding.
You need that homeostasis, that even playing ground. You can't have too much or too little, otherwise, you end up with issues.
Yes. And you know, you see these people that are, and I know we're rambling, but this just fits. You see these people that get the latest and greatest supplement, and they're on 3 different multivitamins, and then they're taking all of these other supplemental vitamins, and you look at their vitamin list and you say, you know what? This, no. This, no. This, no. But doc, I love my Flintstone. Then you know what? Watch the cartoon. You don't need to take the vitamin. The vitamins aren't doing you any good. And the reality is, with the multivitamins, the majority of the minerals that are in there that you're supposed to be getting, because it's vitamins and minerals in a multivitamin, you just need trace amounts. There was a study that I read when I was an internist, actually, that talked about how taking 1 multivitamin a week is about right for getting your trace minerals. Any more than that, and you're taking too much. The problem with the multivitamins is they just pack in as much as they can get into a pill, binding it together with paper, essentially cellulose, wet paper, and then compressing it into a pill and saying, take this, oh, it's good for you. And so you take it, and your body doesn't get much out of it,
And I know they'll throw a lot of water-soluble, like, B vitamins in it, so you get that atomic yellow pea.
Yeah.
Think you're doing something good for yourself, but the body can only use so much. You throw over 1,000% of XYZ, you know, vitamin C, B vitamins. It's like you can't use all that. That's why you are getting, because your body needs to get rid of it.
And so when someone is fighting Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia, certain forms of cancers, autoimmune situations, one of the first things that we do is we say, what are your supplements that are you on, and what does your diet look like? Because I don't want you getting your nutrients from a pill. We weren't designed, would you believe, we weren't designed to get our nutrients from a pill. Imagine that. We were designed to get our nutrients from food.
Yeah. Whole food sources.
Whole food sources. Perhaps the greatest of these is good, clean, raw bee pollen. Doesn't come any better than that. You can live off of this stuff. I did a test once where I went a whole month at a time. I did it a couple times. A month at a time where you're just eating bee pollen and water. I was feeling great after that. The nutrients are there that your body can sustain itself. And it's not like I was some big heavy guy with room. I've always been built like a tapeworm. In fact, my dad told me in high school, Mo, you look like a tapeworm with a toupee. And I looked at him, my smart aleck mouth got the better of me, and I said, jealous. And then he chased me around the house, and I got voted out of the will. My mother told my brother and I one time, we were being pretty rotten, and she says, you two are the biggest pain in the neck. And I looked at her and I said, hey Mom, no pain, no gain. That was the first time I got voted out of the family. So, what are the early signs of Bartonella? We'll get back to Bartonella. Early signs of Bartonella are fever, hence cat scratch fever, fatigue, headache, poor appetite, unusually streaked or rash that goes vertically, those vertical stretch marks that Dr. Noelle talks about, swollen glands, particularly in the head and the arms and the neck area. And what happens on ladies when they get swollen glands that aren't treated properly, especially in this area?
You gotta watch it so it doesn't go into the ducts.
Aha! And what happens then?
And then it gets stagnant, then you got problems.
Yes.
That's when cancer and that can set in and you get bad replication.
So, look at that. We just found a possible pathogenesis to breast cancers. And what have we seen over the last 20 years? Breast cancer going through the roof. There's a number of reasons for that. One of them being, oh, you've got to have a mammogram every year. Let's take this tissue that's extremely tender and let's compress it and let's bathe it in radiation. Sounds like a good idea. What are you, nuts? You're asking for trouble, and now the breast cancer levels go through the roof.
And then you got all this other stuff too. Like we'll talk about a different time. We have just all these chemicals that we're taking on, and any gland is always delicate, whether it's thyroid, you know, breast tissue, anything like that.
And it's not just chemicals. It can be those helminth infections from the tick bites. It can be other roundworm infections, flatworm infections. Chronic Bartonella. I'm really trying to stay on task here, sorry. Chronic Bartonella tends to hide in the non-vascular tissues again. Now, when it gets into the non-vascular tissues, it's a lot harder to detect on a blood test because it's not in the blood anymore.
Yeah.
So then what happens is you've got a situation where the immune system is no longer really even aware that it's there.
Because it's hiding.
It's hiding. the immune system is primarily in the blood. And so if it's out of the blood, it's anaerobic, right? It doesn't need the red blood cells. It destroys red blood cells, but it doesn't need them. If it's hiding in the non-vascular tissues, it's making those tissues more brittle, more vulnerable to injury. It's causing inflammation, causing joint swelling and pain. Lyme does that. Wow. Babesia does that. Wow, unsettling trend. So it gets in there, and it will sit there for a long time. But then it can hitch a ride on the bloodstream and go somewhere else until you've got multiple joints inflamed, until you can no longer walk because your knees are all crippled up, your ankles aren't bending because they're all crippled up. And it's that Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella trifecta that is causing the joints to literally fuse in place. A lot of Bartonella patients end up with neurological issues because it loves that C1 area. It loves the knees, but it also loves C1. What do we know about C1? Oh, chiropractic wizard you.
That is the first vertebrae after, the head and the brain, and then you start coming into the spinal cord. So.
And when you've got a problem with C1, you can have it present in any number of neurological presentations, right?
Yeah.
You can have convulsive behavior, right? You can have extreme migraine headaches.
Yep. Visual disturbance, ear, vertigo.
Numbness,
ear issues.
tingling.
Yep.
Balance issues. Ringing in the ears. We will go for jaw. You can have jaw pain.
Anything, because it's so high up, it can affect anything as it goes lower down.
It affects everything. And so when Bartonella gets back here, man alive, your life is just completely miserable because I've got one patient with pain, shooting pain, coming up and around the ear in that perfect Shaoyang headache type presentation. And usually it's on one side and then it'll switch to the other, and we test and it's Bartonella. It's Lyme and Bartonella. It loves this area. And when you have it in the back of the neck, the occipital region, it's affecting C1, and because of all of the neural pipes, wires coming together right in that one spot, it's the linchpin to the whole spine, the kingpin, the keystone, that's the word I'm looking for. It's holding everything together structurally, but that's also the focal point of the nerves.
And it loves the nerve tissue between the brain, the spinal cord, all the nerves that go off of it. It loves that tissue. Lyme does, Bartonella, Babesia, all of it.
And so, therefore, these weird neurological presentations show up like that. I'm going to check and see if we have any questions that came in here. A lot of likes, no questions yet. So that could just be because we're not live. When you are treating somebody with these infections, what do you do for dietary recommendations?
Reduce the sugar, because any kind of bacteria, fungus, that's what they love. That's where you get those biotoxins coming in from the waste products. Even like if you have a normal, like let's say common cold, you don't want to be feeding it sugar. I've also heard you don't want to be doing a lot of fish when you're getting sick too, like raw fish and that. Is that like sushi and that? I guess I heard that can kind of...
I can see how that would be an issue because of the immune response. If there's any kind of a parasitic situation in the sushi, there's that whole Th1, Th2 balance with the immune system. The immune system can't walk and chew gum. It can only do Th1 response or Th2 response. It's like my brother. It starts to do both and it just starts tripping and falling down. Will, you know you're making jokes about me. Anyway, Th1 response is dealing with those parasites. So if you're eating a piece of sushi, it's raw, it's meat, your body's actually thinking, even if there's no tapeworms or roundworms or flatworms in it, or even protozoa, your body is kind of thinking it's totally out of the norm and treating it like an immune response to the gut for a parasite, because it's living raw tissue. Yes, I know it's dead. They don't, but it's
not denatured
it's
from
fresh.
the cooking process.
It's not denatured, and so those enzymes are still there, triggering our bodies to think that this is living, and so our Th1 response goes really high. What happens when Th1 goes high? Th2, which suppresses viruses and bacteria, goes very low. They're always like this.
Teeter-totter.
It's a teeter-totter. What you want is your immune system functioning great and keeping both Th1 and Th2 in the same level. So when you're eating that sushi at the wrong time, your body Th1 response goes high, Th2 drops, and you're no longer able to deal with the viruses and bacteria. In Chinese, we have a distinction between viruses and bacterial infections. We have what are called the 8 parameters when you're assessing what is going on in a patient. Is it inner? Is it internal? Endogenous? Is it exogenous? Is it in or out, basically? Is the pathogen coming from the inside or the outside? Is it hot or cold? Is it a deficiency or is it an excess? Is it yin or yang? Those are the 8 parameters. When I was taking my board exams, the way I remembered that was ICDY. The whole TCBY. Those of you that are old enough to remember that heard that jingle and said, "Why did he do that?" But those are the 8 parameters that we look at in Chinese medicine. And so then you have, say, a cold. Someone's got a cold. How high is the fever? Is it just a little bit high, like a 99 low-grade fever? The mucus coming out of the nose, is it white or clear?
Or blue. Allergy, blue-ish,
Then it'd be
grayish blue.
Once it starts turning gray or green, then you're looking at more heat presentation.
Okay.
But if it's white or clear, it's cold. Is the patient real cold? Are they sensitive to cold air? Is it a real hot sore throat, or is it just kind of a dull sore throat? We're looking at cold versus hot. Then you get and yin can turn into yang, heat can turn into cold can turn into heat. So then you also have infections where that cold goes into the lungs and settles in there, and you end up with a viral pneumonia or a bacterial pneumonia even. And those are much hotter presentations, usually drier presentations as well. So in Chinese medicine, we're looking to determine, is it hot or cold? So when you're starting to catch a cold, classic Chinese is you eat something hot. Hot and sour soup is always great for that. You're starting to get sick, you slather up some nice hot liniment on your Langerhans cells back in here. You cover up, keep the wind off of you, and you get some nice hot and sour soup. Opens up the pores, opens things up, boosts the immune function.
There you go.
There you go. Boy, how did we get the hot and sour soup from Bartonella?
I don't know, it sounds good though. You're talking about too, like things that you recommend patients stay away from when they're sick, and now that's what we can recommend. And I just say like a good quality protein, and fruits, vegetables, but not a lot of dairy or sugars or processed.
You want the patient to eat food, not fake stuff. And it's interesting to me, whenever a patient is getting cancer therapy and they go to their chemo appointments, they say, why do they have the bowl of candy right there on the shelf? I went in for chemo and they're wanting me to take candy. Well, the sugars feed the cancers.
Mm-hmm.
The sugars feed this bad stuff. If you're going to have sugar, have more of a complex sugar.
Like an apple or something with fiber.
Something
Just
with
slow it
fiber.
down.
Or if you're going to need something like a sweetener, do some honey, some raw, clean honey from a beekeeper that you know, so they're not slipping you a fast one and having it full of nicotinoid-based pesticides, organophosphate-based pesticides, herbicides, all that other garbage. Maple syrup. These are more complex sugars, which don't immediately burn up and trigger that insulin response as fast. So typically in the Western world, for acute Bartonella, they would use the doxycycline and the fluoroquinolones. Fluoroquinolones. Hard for me to say. That's always been hard to say.
They're antibiotics, though, right?
They're antibiotics.
Clear it up.
Because Bartonella is a bacteria, right? Doxy is often used for treating acute Lyme. But once it goes from the acute stage to the chronic stage, and you start having the memory loss, you start having the numbness of the periphery, psychiatric stuff, headaches, nosebleeds, the breathing issues. Once it goes to that chronic stage and you're having this stuff, the joints, then the doxy and the antibiotics, they ain't going to help you much. At that point, you need somebody who's fluent in Bartonella, who has some tools to help detox the body and start killing this stuff and helping the body to get rid of it.
That's here.
That's where we come in. So, what would that be considered? Shameless self-promotion?
Just letting you know where to find it. This is a topic that I know a lot of people are watching, very interested in, because there's not a lot of good information out there, especially not how to get help.
Yeah. We know how to treat this stuff. We've been doing it for a while. We've been doing it successfully. We've been studying it for a long time. Chinese medicine is considered Gu syndrome. I think we talked about that in the last couple of visits. But a lot of these poor people, they are getting treated for these things, and their docs don't know what to do with them, so the docs send them for psychiatric help. And you say, I'm going in for pain, I'm going in for swelling, and I can't move my wrist, and it feels like it's about to break all the time, and I can't feel my fingertips, and my vision's going in and out, and they're sending me to a psychiatrist? Why? Well, it's because Western medicine doesn't treat chronic Lyme, chronic babesiosis, chronic Bartonellosis, doesn't treat it well. That's not their forte. Just like I do Chinese medicine, my forte is not podiatry. Nor would I want it to be podiatry. My forte is acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And as out of necessity for my patients, it's becoming Lyme and Bartonella parasitic infections. If you have questions about Bartonella, Lyme, Babesia,
reach out.
The parasites, reach out. Either comment in the down below the video, down there somewhere, or email us info@siloamcenter.com. Just get a hold of us. Call the clinic. Set up an appointment. Come on in. And because of our late start, you didn't just waste a perfectly good hour. No, you only wasted 40 minutes. Things are looking up today, aren't they? So, thank you on behalf of everyone here at the Siloam Center. Thank you for joining us. If there's anything that we can do to help you, please get a hold of us. Anything you want to say, Doc?
Just thanks for tuning in, guys, and we're gonna keep you guys informed. And are we gonna continue next week with a little bit more Lyme? Do we have a few more topics?
Oh my! We've just entered the entryway. We haven't even started going down the rabbit holes yet.
I think we should keep up with Lyme, unless you want to take a little bit of a break and then come back.
I think we need to stay with Lyme.
I like that.
We need to keep working through some of these co-infections. I think next week what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the relationship between the larger parasites in Lyme disease. The cestodes, trematodes, nematodes. What did I just say? Did I just say a band from the British invasion period of music? No, I just talked about
Worms.
Worms. The worms. I just talked about cestodes are tapeworms, nematodes are
They're little worms.
roundworms,
Yeah.
trematodes are flatworms. They have a direct connection and correlation to Lyme infections. And in Western medicine says it doesn't happen here in the West.
You know what's even more ridiculous? People get these these worms, don't even lose any weight. That's not even fair. You hope at least they'd benefit you in one way. Not at all.
Well, you see what happens in the animal kingdom is you have a coyote. Think of a coyote. Coyote goes out, he eats a cadaver, gets himself a nice case of tapeworms. It goes with his mange. Think of it. You got to have mange and tapeworms to start losing weight. That is not medical advice. Don't do it. On behalf of everyone here at the Siloam Center, shalom and thank you for watching.
Thanks, guys. Bye.